Hi everyone, it's Rax. There was a new blog post released today for the Diablo 3 development team talking about balancing and class sets designs and what they're thinking. So I'd like to just kind of read through it and give you my thoughts as I go. All right, so let's scroll down here. They've been working on multiple content patches for Diablo 3, including the patch that was released in November. There's 2 new class sets, Crusader and Monk, heavily revamped Whirlwind gameplay for the Barb. The result was shattering to the endgame meta that they were ambitiously hoping for and pleased to see. Okay, so they wanted it to happen. Their work is far from done. They're developing the next patch, and they want to provide context on the approach that they're taking to address class set balance in future patches before unleashing you onto the PTR, and let's dive in. Paragons and Greater Rift levels. They look at a ton of data when it comes to balancing Diablo 3. Data comes in many forms, including build guides, gameplay from your favorite streamers, and the leaderboards. Most importantly, we also track our own data internally. It allows us to see a lot more than just the top 1,000 players clears for each category. None of that data should be taken in a vacuum. It all comes together to paint a much bigger, constantly shifting picture. Here are a couple of things that they consider. Individual performers and their Paragon level. Paragon level directly impacts a player's long-term progress. It's important that this is accounted for when comparing different points of data. So we all know that there are some people that can only play here and there, and maybe they end up Paragon 800 for a season or 1,000, but some people who blasted and are very efficient can get up to like Paragon 4,000 or 5,000, and that makes a tremendous difference in what you can clear for most seasons. The intended design and in-practice functionality of each class set. What does the set do best? Does it clear small monsters? Is it good RGK? Does it serve as a support role? Is it better in group or solo? Does it need to be doing something different? There are a couple of things that they specifically avoid when considering overall class balance. The seasonal buffs and their impact on overall power. Now, I have to tell you, right from the beginning, I agree with this. So they avoid, with class balance, trying to balance it around the seasonal buffs and their overall power. First of all, in the simplest form, I think it's way too hard to do that anyway. So let's say that Blizzard has every set for every class completely equal. Let's say it all clears 130, and they all clear it in a different way, and they're coming up with these unique and crazy seasonal buffs like the Triune rings that change your cooldowns or your power, or it comes in with kill streaks that trigger all this chaos and pandemonium that's doing different things. It's just going to naturally affect all the different sets and playstyles differently. So if they're going to release a seasonal power that's only coming for a few months and then try to rechange and retune how it works for every set and every class, they're going to be retuning the game way too much, and there's no guarantee that it can be done perfectly. I just think it's impossible to get it exactly right. So the fact that they avoid retuning everything based on the seasonal buffs, I think is perfectly fine. The second thing, direct one-on-one class comparison. This is out of the whole blog post, the most confusing thing to me. They want to avoid one-on-one class comparison. While we want each class to perform similarly, it is important that classes retain their unique class fantasy. Each class should be able to accomplish similar goals, just in different ways. To me, if you want them to accomplish similar goals and perform similarly, you have to compare them. The fantasy, or doing it in a different way, is totally fine. But I think the end result, to get them to perform similarly and accomplish similar goals, I don't know how you do that without doing a direct one-on-one class comparison. So this part is confusing to me. I don't know how they balance while avoiding this. I gotta be honest, I don't understand. I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just saying I don't understand it. When balancing, we need a point of reference to work around. The ideal class set performance for Diablo 3 is approximately 130 solo and assumes 5,000 Paragon levels. That might sound high to some of you and low to others. If so, that's good. We've landed in a middle ground. Now, I think a target for 130 solo is very good. And a target for 130 solo, in my opinion, would result in a lot of nerfs to a lot of classes. Like, for example, the Heaven's Fury Crusader, who's just stupidly strong right now. I don't know about this assumption of 5,000 Paragon levels. I play more Diablo than almost everybody, and 5,000 Gons still sounds pretty high to me, even on non-season. I have more than 5,000 Gons, but I don't know if I'd ever consider 5,000 Gons a middle ground. But whatever, that's the level that Blizzard chose. But 130 sounds good to me. 5,000 Gons sounds like a lot of Gons, doesn't it? So anyway, assuming a player has 5,000 Gons, here's what all classes landed on average a few weeks into 2.6.7 for non-seasonal play, so you don't have the seasonal buff, aggregated across the player leaderboard. So this data is going to show you that Crusader is just destroying everybody. Makes sense. I would expect Demon Hunter, Necro, and Witch Doctor to be the bottom three, but there's this tie between Barbarian, Monk, Witch Doctor, and Wizard. I can tell you with a pretty high level of confidence that this 130 Witch Doctor level seems high to me. Now, I'm not saying that the data is wrong. What I'm saying is if you have a non-seasonal player at 5,000 Gons pulling solo Witch Doctor, is this solo? Yeah, I assume this is solo. Apologize if I have this wrong. Witch Doctor solo is, while the 130 is definitely clearable, the build is very squishy and difficult to play. So if we consider this data for the people that are a little bit lower, I do not think that they are going to be able to easily do as well as like a Chantoto Wizard or a Tempest Rush Monk. It's not even close to the same difficulty or a Whirlwind Barb. They're all much easier specs to play than the Witch Doctor build. So my point in all this is I think Witch Doctors need more help than this data says. That's just my opinion, but I would have picked DH, Necro, and Witch Doctor as by far the worst. Just for fun, here's a similar comparison during the same time frame upscaled to season. So we have less Gons, but because of the seasonal buff, Barbarians have gone higher. I'm actually very, very surprised that Crusaders have gone lower. It must just be that you don't understand how to use the seasonal buff yet with the data that they had. Demon Hunter has to be way higher because all classes can do 150 now. Necro is one of the very best with their Blood Nova, or their Death Nova guide that I put out maybe a week ago where I did the 150. Necro is one of the very strongest with the seasonal buff. So it's interesting to see how this changes, because if everyone had complete information on all the classes, Necro or Satyr has got to be the easiest 150 with the seasonal buff, right? With the seasonal buff. But we learn things as the season goes on. Maybe this data was taken early. While this is our goal, we also recognize we aren't always going to hit it perfectly. Like many games, Diablo 3 has a lot of mechanical details. A single change can ripple through many parts of the game. This is very, very important. It's very true. So it's important that we're mindful of what each change can affect. We also realize, even with special care, it may take us a few tries to achieve our intended result. To account for this, we have a scale for error based on how a class is performing above or below our guideline. Remember, their guideline was 130 solo. Okay. Plus 1 to 2, it's very close and probably fine. I completely agree with that. You're not going to get it perfect. If it's within 2 GR levels, perfect. 3 to 4 is the warning zone. They need to watch for buffs and nerfs in this area. Action may not yet be necessary. Time to keep an eye on it. Sure. I don't want to read too much into the verbiage here, but there is something that I would throw caution to with this next level. Plus or minus 5 greater rift levels warrants significant change. And the thing that scares me a little bit is the word significant. Because remember, just up here, they correctly stated that a single change can ripple through and make a huge impact. And I don't see in any of these levels something that just says warrants change. So what I'm getting at with all this is Crusader 138. We want them to be at 130. So that's +8. Warrants significant change. I hope that Blizzard is a little bit cautious in how much they nerf it. A significant nerf could bring a Satyr down to the Necromancer level. And I think not just with Diablo, with many other games and gaming developers, sometimes the nerfs or the buffs are way too strong. So I'm a little hesitant that it goes from warning zone to warrants significant change. But I'm not trying to read super deep into the verbiage, but that's something that caught my eye. Bear in mind, this is aggregate data. The above tables only cover overall class performance rather than individual class set performance. Better performing builds may be equalizing out weaker ones when it comes to the broader picture. Because we make changes at the set and item level, we must additionally parse out data by build performance, whether it's class set or Legacy of Nightmares or Legacy of Dreams based. The above method is meant to serve as an example of our general approach and informs us which classes most likely need attention first. So, as was guessed, we could see some help to Demon Hunter and Necro, and I hope also Witch Doctor. You can see in the seasonal ones, Demon Hunter, Necro, and Witch Doctor are really suffering. I'm expecting them to either get some buffs or maybe get some new sets that are very strong. The GR 150 cap, this is a very controversial subject. And essentially what it says is they have no plans to raise it at 150. And it's not what Diablo needs. I agree. And let me tell you why I agree. If they do a stat squish, or if they balance the classes back down, and if we don't have these outrageous builds like Bazooka, which I'm expecting to be nerfed in the next patch, if we don't have Crusaders who can literally solo 150, and they can also do it in a 4-man party with 3 supports, they can kill all the trash and the Guardian. If we don't have any builds that are outrageously strong, Greater Rift 150 will be hard to clear. Now, maybe the top teams will get there and it'll turn into a more minor time attack. But I don't think the answer is to just keep increasing all the numbers of Diablo and letting it spiral out of control. I would much rather they keep the infrastructure the same, because I'm sure it's hard to code, and they prioritize balancing everything at a lower level. And then the race to get to 150 will be a lot more meaningful. So me personally, I am totally fine with them not increasing the GR 150 cap. And this is coming from someone who has cleared thousands, probably thousands of 150s in the last 3 seasons, trying to time attack it. And that's not my preferred end game. So I'm okay with the stats wish and keeping it 150, as long as it's not too easy to get. Solo versus group design. A common misconception is that we solely balance around 4-man groups. While we certainly take it into account, group play is not our only focus because not all players enjoy playing in groups. That's true. We want to make sure that the content we're designing can be enjoyed by the most players, so our design decisions should take both styles into account. If we were to design solely around one style of play, the other would be severely impacted and likely a lot less fun. Sure, yeah, I agree. The one problem with designing it towards solo is it buffs botting. But Blizzard has been doing ban waves this season again, so that's nice. But that's always one concern when you buff solo is how is botting impacted. There is one notable exception to this. Z-DPS, or 0 damage per second builds, tend to only thrive in group play. You can't play a Z-DPS build solo and support your Templar. They don't do any damage. The team debated for a long time as to whether this was a style that we should encourage or actively avoid or remove. Any Diablo game at its heart is about killing monsters and getting loot, so we considered heavily whether this gameplay fit the spirit of the game we had made. Z-DPS is a style of gameplay that some players like, but not all do. We ultimately decided that it's good and that there are unique ways to play this game, and we don't want to take the fun away from those who enjoy it. However, we're also not actively trying to create more Z-DPS builds. Our intent is to design new item powers and sets that either facilitate entirely new builds that can be used solo or in groups, or to give more item support to some of the most requested class skills. Inevitably, regardless of what we add, we know the community will find combinations we never anticipated, and we can't wait to see how those play. So, my take on this is I really think Z-DPS can stay. First of all, like they said, some people enjoy it. Some people enjoy playing the support role. And another thing to consider is Z-DPS is an amazing way for players who can't play all day long to enjoy the end game content. You can make a Z-Barb and barely play at all. I cleared a 150 at Paragon 700 on EU with no gear. Monk requires a little bit more. You've got to have some globes, you got to have perfect CDR, you got to start building the attack speed, yada, yada, yada. But again, it is 1,000 times easier to make a Z-Monk and do a 150 than it is to make a Heaven's Fury Crusader or a Bazooka Wizard. Let's say you have a really good Heaven's Fury Satyr at 1,000 Gons and you're looking for a group. Some groups may not invite you just because you're 1,000 Gons, even though you have great gear. So Z-DPS opens up the whole game for more casual players, which I am all for. They're not going to introduce new Z-DPS sets. That's fine. One thing that I hope Blizzard will do is monks, because of their healing and shielding, barbs because of their incredible buffs and ability to pull the whole map to a single location, are by far the best support classes. The other ones are pretty good. Z-Wiz gives a ton of damage, so does Z-DH. I see some people play a Z-Satyr. There are options, and they're all pretty good, but they're not as good as Monk and Barb. It's always Monk and Barb. So rather than introducing a new Z-DPS set, I would like to see them take a look at the buffs that the other classes give to try to raise it up a little bit so it's not always Barb and Monk. Not asking for anything new, just asking them to maybe tweak to make the other classes a little bit more powerful in the support realm so they're more viable. But remember, a lot of the buffs that they take, if they tweak that up, will make them stronger in solo. Again, back to the chain reaction thing that they were talking about earlier. So I completely understand that it's not easy for them to do. That's just a suggestion. Creative game mechanics and animations. There have been a handful of problematic gameplay styles that have emerged over time, largely due to creative use of snapshotting. If you don't know what snapshotting is, it's where you essentially freeze a certain buff or attack speed or something at a very high level so you can do more damage. That's the easiest way that I can explain it. Or taking advantage of the ability to cancel skill animations. Stutter stepping with your Heaven's Fury Crusader to deal more damage rather than just using the skill normally makes a huge difference. This impedes our efforts at overall game balance, and it makes it very difficult for us to change skills or items without overly punishing the whole class when these tactics aren't used. We're looking at you, Bazooka Wizard and Stutter Steppers. Yes. We want to be able to address the balance issues these builds pose, but we also don't want the classes to fall behind as a result of these changes. So how are we handling this? It's admittedly going to be a game of whack-a-mole as we make fixes and other issues arise through player experimentation. Our first area of concern will be disabling animation canceling on certain skills. The Crusader class is most subject to this, though not alone, and will ensure no class falls behind as a result of losing this trick. After we tackle this specific issue, we'll continue to review and revisit areas of the game where similar mechanics are having a negative impact and act accordingly. I think this is very good. I think animation canceling and all these tricks just encourage macro use, which is against the terms of service. So I'm all for push the button, and that's how much damage the button does, essentially. Thank you for reading, and we're reading too. So to summarize pretty quickly, they're looking at individual performance at their Paragon level. They're looking at the class sets and functionality. they avoid balancing with seasonal buffs. First of all, it's not feasible to ask them to do that. So even if you want them to, since it's not feasible, it's okay. And this is the part that I don't get. I think one-on-one class comparison is fine in terms of power. I think you can keep their class fantasies unique while keeping their power the same. Not a diss on Blizzard, just my opinion. Maybe they'll contact me and tell me why I'm wrong and I can learn from them. I just don't get that part. This is showing the stats of the classes. Essentially, Demon Hunter, Necro, and Witch Doctor are behind the other classes, and Satyr is too strong. I would not be surprised, do not be surprised, if you see Crusader nerfs, Bazooka dead, and DH, Necro, and Witch Doctor getting some love. Don't be surprised. This whole range of how they address things is fine. I just hope that there's a level where they just warrant change and not significant change, because significant change can crush a class. The 150 cap, I'm fine with keeping it as long as 150 is much harder to get after they squish some of these classes. Solo versus group design, remember, buffing solo, while there's a lot of solo players, it also buffs spotting, which sucks. But they're trying to balance them both. That's fine. That's good for everybody. They're not going to make new Z-DPS classes or sets, but Monk and Barb are way better than all the other ones. Can we get some buffs to the other classes? Fixing animation canceling, and they're going to look at other things to make it more fair. Perfect. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this. I can't wait for the PTR. When the PTR patch notes come out, I'll do a complete video analyzing exactly what they're changing. I gave you some of my thoughts of what's coming. And feel free to put in the comments either what you'd like to see or what you think is coming. I read every single comment on every video. So go ahead and throw any of your thoughts or questions in there. And when the PTR comes out, I will blast it. So we'll be testing all the new sets. We'll see what the new meta is. We'll see what's best for solo, what's best for groups, what's best for XP. We'll figure it all out, and I can't wait. Thank you so much for watching. Many more videos are coming.